Hello,
Hello,
everyone.
everybody. Hello, so welcome to the launch event of Tolpuddle Festival 2021. Really pleased to be joining you from a very hot field. And Nigel, as you can probably see, is actually in the Martyrs Museum. So we're really pleased to be here tonight in association with the People's Assembly and the campaign for trade union freedom. So hopefully you're joining us on those platforms, and hopefully you're going to be joining us for the rest of the weekend. We've got a really exciting, packed agenda again. We've got lots of different musicians, lots of different talks, and then we've obviously got the march on Saturday, the Drax March, and then our march on and the wreath laying on Sunday. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for all of that for free online. Look at the Martyrs Museum webpage and look at the agenda of what we've got going on. So tonight I'm really pleased that we've got some great speakers to start us off. We've got Keith Ewing, Professor of Public Law, the Campaign for Trade Union Freedom. We've got Marvin Rees, Bristol Mayor. We've got Dr. Rosena Allin-Khan, the MP and Shadow Cabinet Member for Mental Health. We've got Sarah Woolley, the first woman to lead the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union, and the legendary Bragg. So really pleased that they're all joining us tonight. Nigel?
Yeah, welcome everyone. For those who perhaps don't know the story of the Tolpuddle Martyrs, we're here every year to remember the sacrifice of farm workers who dared form a union and were sentenced to transportation into the slave colonies of Australia. But we also celebrate the fact that there's this enormous protest around Britain, petitions, marches, public meetings, legal arguments, campaigning in the Parliament of the day, and eventually the government backed down and the 6 Tolpuddle Martyrs came back in triumph. But also it was another key step in the rights of working people, which is what we are here to celebrate. So we thought this was a perfect event to launch this weekend because it links the story back in 1834 of protest and triumph on behalf of working people, but just another step in a long road to protecting people at work. And so it's a good subject. So we're going to start with 3 great protest songs from here and from the States. We were in collaboration with some really great radical singer-songwriters. To start with Chris Matthews, a young woman who will be singing a song called We Will Be Free, followed by the American legendary Sally Khan, who I'm sure Billy knows well, and followed by some cracking young rap artists from Bristol who will perform a song called Revolution. So let's hear from them to start.
Hello to everybody at the Tolpuddle Martyrs Festival. I'm Chris Matthews.
I'm Heather May.
And we're going to be singing some songs for you today. Thank you so much for having us, especially all the way across the pond. And yeah, it's an honor to be with you today. This first song is called We Must Be Free. They say that freedom is a constant struggle. They say that freedom is a constant struggle. They say that freedom is a constant struggle. Oh Lord, we've struggled so long, we must be free. We must be free. Black lives matter. Oh yes, they do. And yes, of course, all lives do too. But they don't see me the way they see you. You reach for your ID, they smile. I reach for mine, they shoot. They say that freedom is a constant crying. They say that freedom is a constant crying. They say that freedom is a constant crying. Oh Lord, we've cried so long, we must be free, we must be free. Black lives matter, why can't you see? What makes you less afraid of them than you are of us, than you are of me? Protect and serve us, not kill and hurt us. Oh Lord, how many black lives will it take before that thin blue line turns purple? They say that freedom is a constant sorrow. They say that freedom is a constant sorrow. They say that freedom is a constant sorrow. Oh Lord, we've sorrowed so long. We must be free. We must be free. Black lives matter, both young and old. So many names on my heart, and yet so many stories left untold. When will it end, Lord? When will it end? Tell me, why does it feel like it's 1968 all over again? They say that freedom is a constant moaning. They say that freedom is a constant moaning. They say that freedom is a constant moaning. Oh Lord, we've moaned so long. We must be free. We must be free. Black lives matter. Don't you turn away. Oh, rise up, call out injustice, say their names. I'm no savior, no, not at all. It could just as well be my name as the next one on the wall. They say that freedom is a constant dying. They say that freedom is a constant dying. They say that freedom is a constant dying. Oh Lord, Lord, we've died so long. We must be free.
My name is Cy Khan. I'm in my 56th year as a civil rights, union, and community organizer and musician. Over the years, I've worked with the United Mine Workers of America, with the Textile Workers Union of America. I am a proud member of the organizing committee for Local 1000 of the American Federation of Musicians. And I am so deeply honored to be invited to join you all at the annual Tolpuddle Festival to celebrate and commemorate the Tolpuddle Martyrs. Thank you for letting me be a part of this extraordinary event. For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. I have been a radical for 50 years and more. Stood against the rich and greedy, for the workers and the poor. From Canada to Mexico, I traveled everywhere. Wherever trouble called me, I was there. Like stitches in a crazy quilt that women piece and sew. Wherever there was suffering, I was bound to go, with angry words for cowardice, comfort for despair. Whenever help was needed, I was there. I was there in the Depression, when times were at their worst. But we had them where we wanted, like a dam about to burst. With fire in our bellies, revolution in the air. For a moment we saw clearly I was there. There were times I saw the issues in quite a different light, and old friends turned against me, but I never left the fight. When stones were in my pathway and the road was far from clear, whether I chose right or wrongly, I was there. On a day when hope goes hungry and your dreams seem bound to fall, You may see me by the mill or just outside the Union Hall, when the clouds are empty promises, the sky a dark despair. Like an eagle from the mountain, I'll be there. And you, my brave young comrades, when the future sounds the call, will you be there for the battle? Will you answer one and all when the roll is called up yonder, when the roll's called anywhere? Will you stand and answer proudly, we're still here? Can you stand and answer proudly, I was there?
Fight, it's nothing but an intermission. It's not tradition, hard times you gotta fight. It's nothing but an intermission. It's not tradition, hard times you gotta fight. It's nothing but an intermission. It's not tradition, hard times you gotta fight. Gotta fight to survive. Listen, check it. It's the Mother Earth revolution. See the world stand still, pause pollution. Take time aside, fresh air solution. Clear sky, clear mind, clear this illusion. Yeah, it's the Mother Earth revolution. Too many torn by blinded confusion. I'm no politician, just a human. Time to reflect mankind evolution.
See, it's time for revolution. Evolution of the species can't defeat us. We discreetly and completely keep it moving. Cruising through the Bristol city. Hard times make better music. Time is of the essence. It's just choosing how to use it. Pick yourself up off the floor. Tend to all your bruises. Lick your wounds and help the wounded. Come together. Don't be stupid. Have love for your fellow human. Don't rely on shots from Cupid. Use your words. Don't hold a weapon. You just aim your speech and shoot it. Fight for freedom before you lose it. If you got a brain, then use it. Stand up and be counted, or just sit down and be clueless. Nothing but an intermission. It's a different mission. Listen to the vision, but just keep your stature rooted. Brains stay polluted. Our voices stay muted. United we stand, but divided, diluted. Come now, we charge. Keep that same energy, cause the batteries are still not included.
Fight. It's nothing but an intermission. It's not tradition. Hard times you gotta fight. It's nothing but an intermission. It's not tradition. Hard times you gotta fight. It's nothing but an intermission. It's not tradition. Hard times you gotta fight. Gotta fight to survive. Listen, man, I'm grateful for this life I've been given. People out here paying rent like a mission. No kidding, fuck up the system. Fresh air that we really missing. We feeling trapped inside like one division. It's building up, feels like finale. The government reassures us hardly. So listen carefully to what I say. There's always gonna be a brighter day. Cause it's cold living in the BRS. Yeah, it's a ghost town, locked down. Man trying to oppress. The kingdom never been united less. Yeah, it's a state of mind that makes us the best. We gotta support each other, sit back and assess the situation with the NHS. More pay. Politicians spending, yeah, we need to address and use music to help us express.
I've been on it since sat on carbonnet, since waking in the morning to some cereal with Sonic. Nowadays I scribble sonnets in the city cause I'm from it, where the youth swing blades and drop rings like the Hobbit. I stay on it tryna be the hot topic. All I'm focused on is beats, degrees and peace profit. Cabba to the ends, I'm in pools in the Benz. No skanks, but you'll never catch me talking to the length. They play pretend, I stay real, I'm in the field, no sports. I shoot clips like the force from St. George to Ashton Court. Up in all the city's dope spots, Easton to Stokescroft, where the nitties and the litty city youths post off. Link me a Towdy, I'll get it for a low cost. Singers like a Powdy, I swear the voice is so soft. Bristol still the city full of artists and talents, but we lack appreciation. I'm just trying to find a balance.
It's nothing but an intermission. It's not tradition. Hard times you gotta fight. It's nothing but an intermission. It's not tradition. Hard times you gotta fight. It's nothing but an intermission. It's not tradition. Hard times you gotta fight. Gotta fight to survive. Listen, check it. It's the Mother Earth revolution. The world stands still, pause pollution. Take time aside, fresh air solution. The sky clear, mind clear, this illusion. Yeah, it's the Mother Earth revolution. Many torn by blinded confusion. No politician, just
hey yo, that's an X for me.
Mankind evolution.
Hello. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed really brilliant, some great artists, and it's been a really hard year for the arts. So I really appreciate the people joining us this week. We've got lots of different artists from all over the world and lots of Southwest-based people as well. So hopefully you'll be able to enjoy that over the next few days. So here we are with our panel tonight. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to the speakers for coming along as well. My name's Hannah David, and I'm chair of the Southwest TUC, and I'd like to welcome our first speaker for the evening, Dr. Rosena Allin-Khan. So welcome.
Joined by so many amazing speakers, many of whom are my heroes, and I want to say how inspiring the music was just now. Honestly, it's just making me shiver actually with excitement about the things that we're going to be discussing tonight. And I want to say a huge thank you to the People's Assembly, the TUC, and everyone involved in making this festival a reality again this year, despite the restrictions. And I think that goes to the heart of who we are. At our core, fundamentally, we're all here because we believe in equality. We believe that we're all equal. And I think although I may hold a snazzy political title, who I am really at the end of the day is just a woman who wants to make change and have a better world. And that is no different to any single one of you watching this and joining us today. We are all people who want to see the world be better. And, you know, do I believe that change really sort of rarely comes without protest? Yes, it rarely comes without protest. And I have literally just finished a shift in A&E and legged it here to be on this call. And I tell you, I already feel like shouting. I feel like shouting and swearing at the things I've just seen on my shift alone just today. And without standing together and without understanding that we are all equal and we're fighting for that equality, I think we'll never really affect change. And I was really blown away by something. And when I think about why people protest, in Sai Khan's song, he said, "When hope goes hungry." And for me, that was a really powerful line, because we've got so many communities for whom hope has gone hungry. And when we protest, whether that be a march, whether that be a petition, whether that be writing to people and annoying everyone as much as we can about the issues that matter, we are showing people who are affected that their hope doesn't have to go hungry. We're with them in solidarity. And I think that's the principle of what we're all doing today. And look, as a mixed race woman from a poor background, I've been protesting my whole life. Whenever I've tried to do something, I've always been told how it wasn't for me. I should stay in my lane. I should understand that, you know, girls like me from a background like mine would never amount to anything, and I just had to accept it. When I decided to try and become a doctor, despite not knowing anyone who was a doctor, and not coming from a posh school, and you know, having a single mum who worked 3 jobs, I was told it wasn't for me. And I didn't listen, because at the end of the day, the way we stand up and we protest is by being. It is by not allowing other people's limitations than the ones they want to place on us to affect our lives. And we do that also by standing up for people around us and saying that we will help them up that ladder to smash those glass ceilings. When I decided to go and work in war-torn countries and work in disaster zones and refugee camps and go to Palestine and go and work in East Timor and go and work in Africa, you know, to fight for a better future, I was told it wasn't for me, and I didn't listen. Often I was the only woman. I was young at the time when I first started doing that. Got my backpack on and I went and I protested and I campaigned for change, and I worked in those refugee camps, and I came back and I brought those messages back, like so many of you do. And when I entered the world of politics to try and fight from the inside against those who seek to divide us for a better future, I was told it wasn't for me either. I was told that people like me need to stay in my lane, and I didn't listen either. And protest comes in so many forms, that every day that you stand up for those who are constantly putting you down, you are protesting and you are on your way to make change. Every time you sign a petition, every time you play a radical song with messages in it, like the ones we've heard tonight already, you are protesting. Every time you are telling your employer that you deserve better, you want better, your rights are for better, you are protesting. And even today, I still have the Tories telling me to watch my tone in Parliament, trying to belittle me and others like me for fighting for what we believe in. And do we listen? No, we don't listen. We don't stop, brothers and sisters. We don't stop until the fight is won. And we know that at a time like now, more than ever, we have an uphill struggle. We have a government who's been in power for 11 years, who seek to divide us. And the reason they will never defeat us is because of events like today, because we stand together, because we come together and we find strength from one another. And I think that's another thing that's really important about protest, is you find like-minded individuals when you can feel very, very alone in your beliefs and in your socialism. You're finding others who believe in the same things that you do, and that brings solidarity and that brings strength. Protest is not an end in itself, but we can never underestimate its potential power for change. And I think that is absolutely so significant. And oh my gosh, I feel like I've spent years protesting. For example, that's something that I've done recently. I mean, like before I was even in politics, I was protesting, for like the junior doctor contracts. I was protesting, saying that our patients deserve better. That too many doctors were committing suicide because of the pressure that they were under. I've marched against wars in my time. With the GMB at St George's Hospital, as an MP, I stood in solidarity with contracted workers and GMB members at St George's Hospital when Mighty, the private outsourcing company who employed them, threatened to reduce their pay and increase their workload. We refused to bow to corporate greed over workers' rights and patient safety. Through our collective strength, Mighty finally gave in, and it took standing outside the hospital, doing a social media video and saying to the Mighty chief executive, come and meet us. We are not afraid to strike, because that's what we do. We don't stand up to, we don't take this form of suppression. We stand up to it. And I think we are getting stronger in our movement. And I think that's where trade unions are so important, because I think genuinely have seen from my experience that, people who seek to use their strength within private companies to suppress people that they look down on and see as being below them, I really have seen people start to cower to the pressure that we can bring together. And on the Trump march, I joined thousands of others in London marching against Trump and his hatred. He stood against everything I am, a mixed race Muslim woman from South London. I mean, I don't know if he hates South Londoners, but he probably would have hated that as well. Coming together under one banner with one intention meant our message was clear, that he wasn't welcome here. And I was so proud to address hundreds of thousands of people and march with many of you, I'm sure, against his hate and division, And, look, I love shouting along with the rest of everybody, but protesting isn't really about who can shout the loudest. It's about people getting together and collectively saying in one united voice that change is needed and necessary. And it's a show of solidarity and resolve in the face of injustice and inequality. And I do truly believe that it can affect change. And, when it comes to trade unions, again, we are our most powerful coming together as a collective. And just as the Tolpuddle Martyrs and all their supporters proved nearly 200 years ago, we can never forget this. And this is why I am and always will be a proud trade unionist, as I'm sure most of you watching are too. And trade unions don't just protect the rights of those they represent, they also work to drive political engagement amongst their members through education and support. And I think it's so important that we empower people to be part of a trade union. Look, I remember being a child and, hearing my mum cry at night, knowing she was going to lose her job and felt she had no rights, and she was worried about how she'd feed us, and at that time she didn't know about trade unions, which is really sad, but she didn't. No one had ever told her about them. She didn't know that. And so now every time I meet somebody, who works in any sector, I say, please join a trade union. Please have people stand up for you, and please collectively come together, because your voice is as important as any one of us that stands up in Parliament, if not more so. I think the voice of every patient that I treat in A&E and our NHS is more important than my voice, because they have stories, they have lived experiences that we can take and amplify. So the importance of trade unions are just huge. And I think we need to encourage everybody to feel that their voice is part of this political movement. And with the Tories being in power for over a decade, and with inequality being further deepened by the pandemic, trade unions are more important now than ever. And through their collective strength, we can create change. So I'm going to close by saying, I know the last year has been so tough on you all. It's been tough on workers and activists and everyone fighting for a better future. But please don't give up. We have got this. And people depend on us to keep fighting. We have to keep going and challenging the hateful, divisive rhetoric and the shameful policies of the Tories. And I will continue to fight in Parliament, doing all I can. But I'll also be out there campaigning on the streets where necessary and showing that we will not accept anything but what is fair and right for all of us in society. But please keep going too. I want to be protesting with you. Together, we can overcome the right and create a version of society that we've constantly been told isn't for us, because it is. So thank you everyone for joining, and hope the other speakers will be infusing you tonight and you will enjoy the incredible music throughout the whole of the weekend. And just thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely beautifully put. Thank you, Rosena. And yeah, the talk that you were saying about Mighty, that's ongoing struggles with them that are having a moment. So you've won that one, but there's still so much more to do. And I think it's important that people reflect upon all the victories, but keep strong for everything that we're now embarking on. So now moving on to our second speaker, Marvin Rees.
Yeah, thank you very much, and great to be with you. I wish I was down in the field, but I'm stuck in my house in hot Bristol. Just a few things. First off, we know the nature of the world we're in. Unprecedented levels of inequality. In the UK, we're one of the most socially immobile countries in the OECD. There's two sides to that. It doesn't just mean that people from poor backgrounds don't get the opportunity to ascend in line with their talents and abilities. It also means that people that are less than adequate don't come down and end up in positions of power and leadership in the UK as well. We need to remember that when we look at the leadership in the country. We have hungry children, 1 in 5 children in my city at risk of hunger in a world of plenty, while 2 billionaires have a space race. So we can see the perversity, and in many ways power and the hierarchy that we are contending with actually transcends politics and transcends our national boundaries as well. I'll quote Malcolm X again later, but one of my favorite quotes from Malcolm X is that this is not simply about black and white. It was about black and white, but not simply about black and white, right? It's about rich and poor and exploited. And it's not just an American problem, it's international. And I think it's that kind of insight that made him increasingly dangerous to the United States. And we know that the role of protest, it raises an agenda, it gives people a voice, it gives people a sense of solidarity and hope. Loads of protests we could refer to. I lived in the US for a little while, and with Sojourners, and Selma Bridge March was a seminal protest to talk about when Johnson said, "I have no more capital." SLCL then organised the Selma Bridge March and created the political capital for the Voting Rights Act 65. We also have in Bristol, I should bring attention to the Bristol bus boycott, went unappreciated for such a long time. And now people like Roy Hackett and who's Pitt and Paul Stevenson, who were pictured in the video under the rap song there, really transformed not just what a position in Bristol, even though racial hierarchy is still with us, but also led into some of the first Race Relations Act nationally. But I'd say this, I suppose I'd give a few challenges really. 3 qualifications on this, because I think the stakes are high, right? Where we are in climate change, 10 years for action, tipping point. I think we are a lot more fragile as a society, as many people think. People think that just because we've progressed and we're in the year 2021, certain things can't happen anymore, and they do. Look at the response on England football team. And the saddest thing was that didn't surprise me and many others. So it means that when action is taken, we ain't got time to get it wrong. We have to get maximum impact from any action. So let me just share a few challenges that you may push back on me, tell me I'm wrong, whatever. All right. The first off, the protest itself isn't the purpose. The cause that the purpose is that the protest is pointed at is the purpose. And I think there is sometimes a danger, and I think I've seen it in Bristol, whereby people get caught up in actually having a demo and a protest, and sometimes lose sight of the reason they're having the demo and the action. There are a whole number of dangers to that. One of the dangers is that actually the protest itself can end up replicating many of the social hierarchies that they claim to be fighting against. And look, I'm going to be very personal here. Just like Rosa, I'm a mixed race guy. Grew up, spent time in a refuge, and I've got kids who went to private school shouting at me about neoliberalism. And I say, hold on a minute. We can build an alliance, but you have to have some self-awareness. And the alliance is what we're after, right? So we have that with a democratic mandate big enough to drive through the scale and pace of change we need. And just being on a demo is not the qualification, right? It's the cause. The second thing, I think there is a conversation to be had about the relationship between protest and between elected politics. I must admit, I won't say who, but I've been quite demoralized when I look back at my own journey and heard people just casually dismiss electoral politics. So it led me to dismiss electoral politics from my background for many years. And actually, if the whole system works for you, you don't need electoral politics to work for you. Right? Because the whole system works for you. It doesn't matter who's in government, because legislation don't make any difference, because you've got a lot of personal resource. If you're in that position, more power to you. You've got a lot of resource at your disposal. But people from backgrounds like mine do need electoral politics to work for them, because policy matters. It makes a difference. Children's centres matters. Policies around child poverty matters, and hunger and housing policy matters. So it's really important. And I'm minded of a relationship between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King that I was really pleased was included in the film Selma, when essentially Malcolm X said to Coretta Scott King, and remember the dynamics, is King some kind of Uncle Tom versus Malcolm X the radical, and Malcolm X said to Coretta Scott King, I don't hate your husband, but they know if they don't deal with me, if they don't deal with him, they got to deal with me. And there's a role that protests can play in making it possible for elected politicians to be more radical, right? Because they offer a palatable valve. And certainly King went from being seen as a most dangerous man in America to be seen, we better deal with this guy because we've got some stuff, some more challenging stuff waiting in the wings if we don't. Didn't get everything, didn't solve racism, but there's a dynamic to be exploited there. And I think sometimes we miss that. The third thing I say is that protest has to be strategically minded. I've said a number of times, if you read Sun Tzu, he says successful generals know they've won the battle before they engage in the battle. Now, you can't do that every time. Sometimes you just have to roll the dice. But I think sometimes recently I've seen too often when people just go out and do a demonstration without thinking through what comes next, what happens if they respond like this, how does this relate to the outcome I want? I challenge, I think I see it in the police crime bill. It's just gone through, won by 100 votes. The conversation on Bristol is not about the police crime bill, it's about police violence. That's not what it was actually about in the first place. It was about the bill, and that wasn't defeated. So I think there has to be clear conversations about strategy and how it's going to work, how it relates to electoral politics, and has to remain focused on the cause. We haven't got time to engage in actions that don't produce results at this moment in world history. So, you push me back, and maybe wrong, but just some of my reflections. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Marvin. It's really great to have your views on this, especially as a Bristol resident myself. So thank you for being with us here tonight. Just to say to everybody who's watching, I'm getting your messages through, and it's really good to hear from you. Shout out to RMT and to Fluff from the regional committee. Please do keep on sending us in your messages saying where you're listening in from. It's lovely to hear from you. So thank you to our first two speakers. And now, if we can go to Sarah Woolley, please. Hello, Sarah. Welcome.
Hi, Hannah. Thanks for the invitation to speak tonight alongside a great platform, and hopefully next year we will be in the field in person together, and I will actually finally get to Tolpuddle. And what fantastic music to get us started and revitalise us for the weekend, because I'm not sure about anybody else, but this has been a long week, and the hot weather at the back end of it has just dragged it out even further. But I do feel revitalised and ready for the weekend and all the sessions to go along with it. The theme of the rally is pretty fitting. Change rarely comes without protest. You know, the right to protest is the lifeblood of democracy, and democracy is fundamental to how trade unions operate and should be fundamental to how our nation operates. It's no surprise that the Tories have attacked it. We know they have a history of attacking trade unions. We have the most draconian trade union legislation in the world, and we know that how they like attacking our class in general, especially when we start to mobilise as the 99%, because when we stand together, we are powerful, and they don't like that. It scares them and forces them to retaliate the only way they can, by changing the goalposts around what's legal and what's not legal. The Tories know anger's building. It's built over the last 15 months. It's built before COVID hit, and the only way that we can express that is to protest. Even before COVID, we saw the amazing young people striking and protesting over climate crisis, walking out of school and marching down the streets, demanding a better future for them and the people that follow them. The brilliant DPAC, Disabled People Against Cuts activists, calling out the government repeatedly and loudly on their disgusting treatment of disabled people, because the Tories have introduced more red tape and barriers, preventing people claiming the vital benefits they need to support themselves to live, instead of helping those people. Not to mention the changes and the cuts to those benefits and support systems under the umbrella of austerity that has crippled every aspect of our society. We saw last year the Black Lives Matter movement empower millions of people around the world to stand up against the institutional racism in our society after the horrific death of George Floyd, and more recently the death of Sarah Everard triggered hundreds of thousands of women in the UK to stand up and say no more to violence against women and demanding the right to be able to walk down the street without fear. All of these actions have happened in response to significant events happening that have had a huge impact on millions of people. And the only way that we can show our solidarity or our disagreement is to come together, stand together in unity and make our voices heard. Because voting at the ballot box doesn't happen often enough, and it doesn't lead to the change that we need to have a better life. And unfortunately, especially over the last 12 to 15 months, the opposition leadership in Parliament is not doing it for us either at the moment. And what we've seen each time we come together on issues like these is people marching, singing, chanting, blowing whistles, or in the case of a vigil, sitting quietly in solidarity and remembering, the majority of which happens without incidents of violence. The whole purpose of a protest is to disrupt the norm, is to make people take notice and to get involved, ask what's happening and gain a greater understanding, not relying on the right-wing media, which we know doesn't paint a truthful picture. In reality, the practicalities of a protest are no different really to closing London down for the marathon, or the New Year's fireworks, the Grand National, or the European Cup final that we've just lost. All of these examples disrupt people's daily lives, yet they carry on without people getting kettled or intimidated for exercising their rights, which is exactly why the Police and Crime Bill has been put through, to restrict our rights even further, an attempt to silence us. The bill will ultimately have an impact on our members and their right to strike. I'll always remember the equity protest last year, which saw pantomime dames march on Parliament, our fast food rights protest, the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union protest outside Parliament over 0 hours contracts, the brilliant GMB British Gas picket lines, our Hovis strikes, both historically in Wigan and more recently over in Northern Ireland, Deliveroo protests, Sheffield needs a pay rise marches on the bosses in places like Papa John's, and so many more fantastic examples of union members removing their labour as a last resort to get the employer to listen, or protesting a significant change to legislation that will negatively impact the masses. All of these are seen under the bill as non-violent protests that the police can tackle, as they have significant disruptive effect on the public and in some cases access to Parliament. And we know the reality has been shown throughout our history and over the last few months that it won't be a can tackle, it will very much be a will tackle. As trade unions, we won't be bullied into silence by a government that has systematically stripped back every aspect of our society through austerity and has consistently shown how inept it is, not only through this crisis, but previously too. I only need to say Brexit. We will continue to take strike action where our members democratically mandate it after other measures to resolve disputes haven't worked, because as the movement has shown time and time again, even with the ridiculous hoops to jump through, we smash the barriers that they have put in place. We will continue to stand in solidarity with our sisters and brothers who are being oppressed and attacked, and we will continue to hold this government to account. We may be smaller as a trade union movement than we were 20 to 30 years ago, but we are still a force to be reckoned with and can still force change. Look at the number of U-turns that have happened through the crisis on the back of unionised members coming together like the teaching staff. And I'll finish on this as we're on a public platform. If you're watching this and aren't in a trade union, join one. But don't just pay your subs and hope for the best. That's no good. Be active, organise your workplace and your community. Talk about the issues that are affecting you and be the force of change. TUC website can point you in the right direction of which union to join if you're not sure. But remember, you and your work colleagues are the union. You are powerful when you stand together, and you definitely deserve better. Solidarity.
Brilliant, Sarah. Thank you so much. That's a really great way to end. And I know that we're going to see you tomorrow as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And if anybody wants to see what the different discussions and different musicians that we're going to have over the weekend are, please do look on our Facebook site, on the museum website, and keep in touch that way. Obviously, we're going to be working with the Bristol People's with the People's Assembly tonight, but you'll be able to find all of this on their streaming and our streaming for the evening. We have our next speaker, who I'm really pleased to welcome, Keith Ewing. Hello, Keith.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation. I'm here on behalf of the Institute of Employment Rights and the campaign for trade union freedom, and I'd like to just offer a few reflections, I think, on proceedings tonight. And the first of these is to recall why we are here in the first place, and to remember the debt that we all owe to the Tolpuddle Martyrs. And just by way of background, I think just to pick up on some of the points that Nigel made in his introduction, I think just to go back to recall that the Six formed a union. The union was known at the time as the Friendly Society of Agricultural Labourers, with its Grand Lodge to be located in Tolpuddle. And the reason for this action by the Six was the decision by their employers to cut their wages from what was then 10 shillings or 50 pence today to 7 shillings or roughly 35 pence today a week. Now, that would equate to about a cut from, say, £60 to £40 a week at today's prices, or today's rates, taking into account inflation and all the rest of it since then. Now, the Webbs, in their famous history of trade unionism, which was published in 1920, they tell us that in cutting the wages of the Six, the employers were acting in breach of an agreement which had been solemnly concluded in the presence of the village parson at Tolpuddle. And for taking the action of joining the union and for coming together in this way, the Six were then charged under what was then called the Unlawful Oaths Act of 1797. So it's a fairly obscure statute which had been dragged up to be used against these Six Dorchester labourers. Well, they were then marched off to Dorchester, where they were convicted for their trade union activities after a trial before a hostile court. And again, if we go back to the Webbs for their account of the trial, the Webbs tell us that the judge addressed the grand jury on the case at portentous length, as if the prisoners had committed murder or treason, and inflicted on them, after the briefest of trials, the monstrous sentence of 7 years transportation. So the men were convicted on the 18th of March, 1834. By the 30th of March, they were in the prison ships, and by the 15th of April, it was announced in Parliament so that 5 of them were already on their way to Botany Bay. And George Lovelace, the 6th, he went later and ended up in Port Arthur on the southeast tip of Tasmania, which is probably as far away from Tolpuddle as it is possible to be at the time. And the penal colony at Tasmania, I mean, just incidentally, the Lovelace's location, George Lovelace's location, it is still there. So the penal colony has been preserved, and the house which Lovelace occupied is still there. It's on the hill in the colony, which was preserved for political prisoners. It wasn't just the Tolpuddle Martyrs who were transported to Australia for their political views, or other people at the time. But Lovelace was one of them, and his location of exile is still there for all to see. To continue with the story, I think important, I mean, as Nigel pointed out, the 6 did not serve their full term. They returned to England in 1836 after they'd been pardoned by the then Home Secretary. And this pardon was in response to a well-organized political campaign of protest and activism, which, if we go back to the webs, they tell us that the protest was on such a scale that special constables had to be sworn in to help police the activities. Troops were deployed to London in order to prevent an uprising, which the government of the day feared. And I think the campaign was all the more impressive for the fact that this was taking place at a time when workers did not have the vote, to go back to the earlier discussion about electoral politics, and that they had no opportunity to mobilize electoral pressure on the government. They relied on the raw power of mass protest to reveal their hostility, invoke fear, and produce change. And faced with this popular resistance, a worried government backed down. The justice of political protest displaced the injustice of the law. And I think there is a lesson to learn from that experience. So the second point, I mean, apart from just focusing on the and recalling the events which led us to where we are today, I think the second question to raise is, well, why is this still significant? Well, why should we be doing this today, almost 200 years later? Why is it still relevant? And I think the answer to that is that because the context, I mean, it's true that the context has changed greatly in 200 years, but I think the fundamentals remain largely the same. And in that sense, I think Tolpuddle, I mean, it's almost an allegory. It's a story that helps to illuminate many modern truths, and for that reason should never be forgotten. And the first of these truths is the truth of employer power. Now, it is true that we no longer have our agreements negotiated in the presence of the village parson. We rely now on the law of contract to strike a solemn agreement with our employer. But as we've seen recently, employers are free to change these contractual terms at will. They can cut your pay, reduce your holidays, decide to remove a shift premium. We call this fire and rehire. If you don't like it, you can always bring a claim for unfair dismissal in our highly sophisticated legal system. But you will fail, because the employment tribunal will tell you that it's not unfair for the employer to take these steps, to refuse, not unfair to dismiss you because you refuse to accept a pay cut from £60 to £40 a week, or its modern day equivalent. It is not unfair. Fire and rehire does not give rise to a remedy for unfair dismissal. So things are better today than they were in 1834, but the legacy of Tolpuddle still survives in its visual expression of this power of the employer, which remains. And the second point, I think, which is worth emphasizing, the second point in relation to why Tolpuddle continues to be relevant, is that it's true that we no longer prosecute trade unionists for administering or taking secret oaths. And it's also true that we don't transport those who do to New South Wales or to Tasmania. But we continue to penalise trade unionists and to punish trade unions for similar acts of loyalty and solidarity. In recent times, certainly in my lifetime, we've witnessed blacklisting and victimisation, discrimination and dismissal, injunctions, fines and sequestration, prosecution and conviction, the use of infiltration and informers by the state, and in the Shrewsbury case, perhaps countless others which are unknown, we've seen miscarriages of justice as a result of government collusion with the legal system. Again, things are better, but the legacy of Tolpuddle survives. And then the third lesson, I think, from Tolpuddle is the lesson about the power of protest. What led to the pardons and to the return of the Tolpuddle Martyrs was not legal action. Nobody was waiting for the election of a Labour government. It was direct action by workers themselves, including, again, to use, going back to the webs, including a monstrous procession of trade unionists. And that episode, I think, illuminated the reality of what causes governments to change is the fear of countervailing power. The fear that the government has lost support, lost the support of the country. The fear that has lost control of events. The fear of the void and uncertainty that is created as a result. And as those who fought for the return of the martyrs also revealed, that power needs to be organised. Not enough that that power is latent. What the success of Tolpuddle, the success of the Tolpuddle Martyrs campaign revealed, I think, is that that latent power has to be roused. It needs to be organised and it needs to be mobilised. And that, I think, is a real lesson of the success of the return of the Six. So that, I think, is a challenge. I mean, it's a lesson, but it's also a challenge for modern trade unionism at a time when I think our fortunes are at a pretty low ebb. In the sense that the challenge now is how do we rouse, how do we organise, and how do we mobilise that power which would enable us to resist much more effectively than has been the case hitherto. So let me conclude by saying that although we have come a long way since 1834, I think in some respects we have not travelled very far. We've much to learn from those who, in solidarity with the Six, fought successfully for their release. And although I don't underestimate how hard it is to rouse, organise and mobilise, it cannot have been easier. It cannot have been easier in 1834 than it would be today. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Keith. Really appreciate you coming and speaking to us. So we're actually going to be going on until just after 8, and then we'll be going on to some music. Before I go over to our last speaker, Dr. Rosena, I know that you may have to leave just before that time, and I didn't want to have you go without asking you one last thing. You won't be able to join in the final discussion, but just a quick one. You're absolutely inspirational in both of your jobs and everything you do. And I just wondered a really quick question. This year, who can you say has inspired you? Just one person. It could be music, it could be politics, someone who this year you've looked at and thought, yes.
The honest answer to that question would be a father who I met when I was working in the intensive care in the second wave, and I had the role of taking families via iPad once every few days to the bedside of their loved one in the intensive care unit. And there was a 27-year-old black woman in the intensive care unit who had given birth on the unit early as an emergency cesarean. Her baby and this father's baby was in the neonatal unit, and they both had 3 more children, all aged under 5 years old. And as I took this iPad and held it up, and the kids shouted out, "Mummy, mummy, wake up, you've been asleep too long." Hearing that father and how he was, and how he brought the love despite the very worst of circumstances to his children, despite having his wife on a ventilator, hiding his pain, and knowing he had a newborn baby that he'd never touched in a neonatal intensive care unit. That for me was the definition of a hero. Somebody who went to work every day just to put food on the table, from a community that was one of the most adversely affected, doing a job that the Tories would sniff at, and holding it together for all of his children, and still trying to be as positive as he could for them. That for me was the epitome of just one of the heroes like him that I met throughout the whole pandemic and the whole of this last year and a half.
Thank you, that's brilliant. And there's I'm sure there's so many examples that we could say of people that have really inspired us and kept us going this year. I appreciate you doing that, and thank you very much for everything you do. So now over to our final speaker, and someone who I'm sure you're all very familiar with, and someone who will be sharing music of this weekend as well. But here to speak to us tonight, over to Billy. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you to Tolpuddle Festival for inviting me to speak this evening. It's such a shame we can't get together for another year, because it's one of the great things around this part of Dorset is the Tolpuddle Festival. We have the opportunity to come down to an area not known for its radicalism, but where the founding of the English trade union movement as its origin story, I guess. And it's great to welcome people from all over the Southwest and the rest of Britain to our corner of the world. And it's going to be such a sunny weekend as well. So it's a real shame. But with regard to protest, it's one of the questions I'm often asked is, can music change the world? Now, people generally want music to be able to change the world. It's kind of a bit of a sort of a leftover from the 1960s, where a generation who had witnessed the cultural revolution, where pop music had mixed black and white culture and brought them together and produced something new in terms of rock and roll, they thought they might be able to create a political revolution as well. And that was possible because back in the tail end of the 20th century, music was the only medium available to young people. If you had something to say about the world, you didn't have Twitter, you didn't have Facebook, you couldn't make a film on your phone, you couldn't go write a blog or anything like that. The only medium available was to learn to play an instrument, write songs, do gigs. So consequently, music, that vanguard role in youth culture, it had to take on board everything about being young. And an important part about being young is wanting the world to change, wanting the world to be better, wanting the world to be different from the way it's been before. So protest music was a big part of that. But unfortunately, the reality is that music is not really able to bring about social change because it has no fundamental agency. It doesn't in itself have the means by which to effect change. So what does it do? The frustrating thing is we all know how music can change us as individuals. You put a song on, it can draw a mood out of you, it can make you lift you up and get you ready to go out on a Saturday night, or you may be feeling melancholy and it can draw you in. We're aware of the power of music, so we want it to have that ability to change the world. But unfortunately, it doesn't really work like that. But there is in music, all sorts of music, not just political music, there is a solidarity, an emotional solidarity. And that's, expressed best if you go to a gig and your favorite singer is singing your favorite song, a song you've put so much emotion on, and you're the singer's singing it, you're singing it, and 1,000 people around you are singing it as well. You feel part of something, you feel you're not alone. And I think that is an absolutely key part of the role that music can play, because the currency of music is empathy. When you write a song, you're trying to draw the listener to a situation they may not themselves experienced, and to draw their attention to that and to get them to feel some compassion for the person that the song is about, whether it's a political song, a love song, whatever. Or it works the other way around too, because you as a listener can draw some empathy from the song if it seems to be a song that relates to your situation. And that's the real power of music. It has the power to make us feel that we're not alone. And that does have a political dimension. That has a real political dimension. Now, when I go out on tour, when I'm doing a show, and I've come to the end of the evening, and I end on a song like "There Is Power in a Union," and everybody in the audience is singing, they raise their fists, that great expression of union solidarity. I come off stage with my activism charged up, really charged up, and my cynicism banished. What a lucky old sod I am. Every night I go out on stage, it gets dark with everybody, and I get rid of my cynicism. It's God knows what I do without it. It's been tough these last 15 months, but that feeling that I get, that I understand, that can happen. I'm trying to make the audience feel that as well. I'm trying to make them draw strength, not from what I'm saying and what I'm doing, but from everybody around them. And they're in their town. They've got, whatever's happening to them in their environment, I don't know, but, they may be dealing with a lot of difficulties, racism, abuse, all sorts of stuff. But they see there's a room full of people who appear to be on their side, and they draw some strength from that. They take away with them some power from that. My small protest in the song fires up the room. And that, I think, is the role that music has to play in protest. It doesn't in itself change things, but it fires up the activism in the audience so that they go away and they do their bit. They do their bit. Also, music has a role in bringing people together in times of protest. During the miners' strike, music played a very important role because it allowed a focus for solidarity in towns and cities around the UK that didn't have a pit, so that you didn't only be able to raise money for the miners if you went to the coal fields, which were often, mostly in the north and Scotland and in Wales. You could bring to your town everybody who was in solidarity with the miners. You could bring them out to express their solidarity, raise some money. So music has that very important role to play as well. But its role really is in supporting those people, as Marvin has said, who are involved in the electoral process, and how music connects with that. Because it's all well and good writing protest songs, but if you're not at some point engaged with the actual process of democratic change, then you're really just singing about it. You've got to find a way to connect with, engage with the people who are making practical change, and it's often not popular to do that. It can damage your career. It can have ramifications. Protest is never popular. We're talking about the anti-protest bill going through Parliament now. This is just the latest manifestation of a constant theme. I read something just this last week from 1966, from a poll done in the United States of America in 1966. October 1966, they asked 1,250 white people. They asked the question, all in all, do you feel the demonstrations by African Americans on civil rights, this is, the March on Washington, Martin Luther King, do you feel the demonstrations by African Americans on civil rights have helped more or hurt more in the advancement of African American rights? 85% of white Americans said they felt it hurt. This is the same mentality of those people booing the taking of the knee. They don't want to be troubled by the reality of life in a racist society. They don't want to see that. And that's what protest has to do. It has to make people feel uncomfortable. It has to send a question out broader to the whole of society. So obviously music has a role to play in that. You can engage in a campaign with a song that sends out a message, broadcast on the radio, broadcast through streaming. Music has that role there. But don't kid yourself that it's the actual, the doing of the gig, the writing of the songs that is creating the change. you know, the whole process has to go all the way, as Marvin said, you know, it has to go all the way to electoral politics, and protest is part of that process. It's how we allow people who aren't politicians to engage in the process of change, protest. And music has a role in that by plugging people together, because it's my experience and my belief that if you can take that empathy that's in the audience, that's in music, and you can mix it with activism by bringing people to somewhere like the Tolpuddle Festival, then you can create solidarity. And I think that's the start of all social change. Music has a role to play in that. It's not a vanguard role. It doesn't have agency, but it does have a role to play. And that's why the Tolpuddle Martyrs Festival and other festivals like it around the country that are based on the politics of empathy and compassion and engaging with people in activism is so important. And I really, really hope we can all get together there next year. And I'll bet it pees down with rain when we do.
Thank you so much, Woolley. I wish you were here with us. Next year, we will all be here, I'm sure, and it'll be an absolute belter. If it makes you feel any better, I've been contending with a blinding sunset and really large wasps. So, you know, it's not all great here.
The joys of a British summer.
Okay, so I think if you're happy, I'd like to bring up one thing that I wanted to talk to you all about. So we're here. Oh, actually, first, just to say that we're here with the with the People's Assembly, not Bristol. I keep going to that because I'm Bristolian myself. So we're here with the People's Assembly and the Campaign for Trade Union Freedom. And they'd like me to remind you that the Tory Party Conference on October 3rd is when their big next mobilisation is going to be, with big focus on the police bill. And there'll be events all week in Manchester, including big demos. So people go and check that out, and just keep an eye on what the People's Assembly are doing as well, because they're always doing interesting talks and kind of getting interesting stuff going. We've had the trade union bill come up. We've got the police crime and sentence and courts bill coming up. And then I think we all know that protest is an important part of our democracy. And I was just thinking about the fact that for young people especially, there's lots of people out there for whom that they're not able to vote yet. They're too young to vote, but they've been really getting active at the moment. And this kind of protest is a way for them to have a voice and to join in and to maybe get involved in that more serious level, either joining a trade union when they get their jobs, or, you know, joining politics, local, national, and doing those kind of things as well. What kind of ways would you, if you were talking to a young person right now, what would you say to them to get involved, to get informed, and to start doing things to voice their anger in a useful way? If anyone would like to go first before I pick on someone, I'd love to have a quick 1 minute from each of you. Directed at young people. I'm going to go for Marvin first, please.
Can I just put another challenge in there? I think we need to not just frame everything in terms of anger. I can't be other than I am, right? As a black man, that's a really dangerous space for me to go to. You know, I am angry, and I think sometimes, listen, I'm going to be real about it here. Sometimes I felt quite judged by middle-class white activists who are at perfect liberty to display their anger on the streets in a way that I wouldn't be, and people like me wouldn't be. And that actually can be a point of real tension. And we need to have some self-awareness. And I think too, one person with a solution when I'm trying to think of how we tackle county lines or child hunger or housing crisis, one person with a solution is worth 10 people shouting at me. All right. So yes, we need to let our emotions out, but at some point, someone needs to say, right, what are we going to do about this? All right? And I faced that challenge myself as a young person with Operation Black Vote. Simon Woolley said to me, "You got a great analysis, Marvin, on why the world is rubbish, but what are you actually going to do about it?" All right? And that was a challenge for me to actually get off the touchline, join a political party, and say, "I'm a fallen human being. I'm going to work with an imperfect political party in a broken political system in a damaged world and try and get something good out of it, even though I'm not going to get everything I want." So we've got to get some solutions in there. And I think the other thing I would say to well, I mean, I encourage young people to get involved all the time, just like I was recruited into politics in many ways through OBV. But my other point is to make sure that people are ferociously minded on alliances as well. I think I made it in my opening remarks. I think we're in the danger of some of the social justice movement becoming a platform for people to demonstrate their sense of moral superiority more than it is about the cause. Now, that's not to undermine the legitimacy and the urgent need for social justice movement, but I just think we have to be very, very sensitive to that, because if it goes like that, then it does undermine the ability to build the alliances and get the scale of support we need for the democratic mandate to push through life-disrupting legislation. We have to disrupt lives for climate change. We have to disrupt life for the recovery of nature. But you've got to keep people with you, otherwise you end up with a kind of a Trumpian type backlash potentially. So I think we have to be minded about alliances as well as proclamations of what is right.
Brilliant, thank you, Marvin. And Sarah, directed at young people. Actually,
how do I follow that? I think it's just important, from my point of view, is to listen to the young people, to listen to their issues and concerns, and then support them in the action that they want to take, not telling them what action I think they should take. You know, I've got a 16-year-old son. We have lots of discussions around what he's passionate about. I take on board, you know, Marvin, I'm not in your position and I don't even pretend to be, but I take on board your point about being angry, and I normally try and use the word passionate, because it is passion that's driving people to take action. I listen, and we have discussions about how he can force change with his friends and his rugby team and things. But it's all about listening to them, listening to the young people, what they need support with, and then providing that support and signposting them rather than dictating.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah. Keith? I'm sorry, you're still muted. Classic situations. Thank you. Hello.
I've got new technology. I'm trying to work between two laptops here because my own one isn't working very well. So yes, it's a really good question, and I think partly because there are so many different issues that need to be addressed and to consume or occupy our time. But from where I'm coming from, I think the most critical thing at the moment is to try to strengthen the trade union base, and just to reflect on the fact that trade union membership has almost halved since 1980. So I think we're down to about 6 million, and one time we were up at 12 million, and that's quite a significant reduction, because it speaks volumes, I think, about power. I mean, and the allocation of power, which I tried to touch on in my presentation. I think why it's important that young people engage with trade unions. Well, one is, I mean, it brings vitality, I think, to the organization and to the movement, which is sometimes lacking. And we see the energy that it brings largely, I think, in the Bakers Union through the work that Sarah and her colleagues have done in some of the fast food chains. So I mean, it's not just that. It's about re-empowering workers. It's about revitalizing the movement. But the trade union is a place where many of the issues that concern us should come together, and where together through the union we can organize on these multiple different platforms and issues, and do so, I think, with perhaps a greater effect than we're doing at the moment. And I just want to say one other thing, I think, is to say that political protest is, it's important because it's effective, and we can judge its effectiveness by the way in which, really say, well, by the bill that's currently before Parliament that people have spoken to. But in a sense, you can go back historically. There are moments in time where governments have legislated to contain and to control the protest of the people by legislation. You go back to the 1930s and 1980s, and now we're going to have more of the same the same scale, I think, from the present government. So that in itself, the fact that it is so, they want so tightly to control it, is a vindication, I think, of its effectiveness.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And last but not least, Billy, the young people, how you can turn their passion into action and solidarity.
Yeah, I mean, trying to, read what's going on social media, it seems the passion of young people when they're involved in politics is accountability. If you look at the movements that have arisen since the turn of the century, Black Lives Matter, Extinction Rebellion, Me Too, what they have in common is their accountability movements. And, the woman who filmed the murder of George Floyd was 17 years old. A 21-year-old footballer is holding the government to account over feeding school kids. Young people are much more attuned to the idea of accountability. And I think the trade union movement has something to talk to them about. The Tolpuddle workers became martyrs because they were seeking accountability in the workplace. In fact, I'd go to argue that not just our movement, but our party as well, fundamentally is about accountability. How do we hold absolute power to account? It used to be, in the old days, it was the absolute power of Rome or the absolute power of the monarchy. Now it's the absolute power of international capital. How do we hold those people who, have no, gone beyond the reach of our national governments? How do we hold those people to account? So I think accountability is the big issue which we use to engage with young people and say these are the mechanisms that we've developed to achieve accountability through the years. We have a great tradition of trying to do that, and you can be part of that as well.
Brilliant. That's really wonderful. Okay, so that's us for the evening. It's gone really quickly, and I'd like to say thank you so much to all of our speakers. You've been really great, and it's been a nice range of different points and people's backgrounds. Thank you so much to the People's Assembly and the Campaign for Trade Union Freedom who've been here with us tonight. Thank you to everyone who's been helping me here set this up over Field. And thank you to everyone who's been watching and for all your lovely messages of solidarity. I can see that people have tuned in from all over the place. So please keep tuning in over the weekend. Tomorrow, we're kicking off again at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm afraid that's me again, but we're going to be live streaming again, Facebook, off our web page and YouTube. So please do join us then. We're now going to go over to some music, and we're going to finish the night with some brilliant artists. We've got Carsey Blanton, we've got Graham Moore, we've got Jess Silk, the brilliant Billy Bragg, and some others. And this is quite an international lineup again. We're lucky that we can have it even more international than usual. So see you all again, if not sooner, then hopefully next year in Tolpuddle. Cheers, everybody.
Hello, friends across the world. My name is Carsey Blanton. I am a singer-songwriter and a big supporter of the rights of workers all over the world, so I'm very excited to be part of this year's Tolpuddle Martyrs Festival, and I hope to see you all in real life in the not-too-distant future. I'm going to start with a song called Down in the Streets. This is from my new album, Love and Rage, and I wrote it during the summer rebellions that we had here in the States, as well as in many other cities all over the world in the summer of 2020. Mama, it's a disaster, going faster and faster, and all of my heroes turning out to be bastards. Ain't no peace to be found in this company town, 'cause the house will keep winning till we burn the house down. So all my friends in the streets tonight, we go singing. All my friends who are down and out, we're gonna fight for all our friends in the up above, with all our rage and all our love, adding fuel to the fire down in the streets tonight, where they call it a riot. 'Cause 'cause we ain't keeping quiet. But if you've been listening, we know you don't buy it. And they say we've been stealing, but who's the real villain? When we can't even make a living, now they're making a killing. So all my friends in the streets tonight, we go singing. All my friends who are down and out, we're gonna fight. For all our friends in the up above, with all our rage and all our love, adding fuel to the fire down in the streets tonight. Well, they can lock us up and they can knock us down, but we're the ones who run this town. We're gonna shout it out until we make them face. We're the ones who own this place. They can lock us up and they can knock us down, but we're the ones who run this town. We're gonna shout it out till we make them face. We're the ones who own this place. So all my friends in the streets tonight, we go singing. All my friends who are down and out, we're gonna fight. For all our friends in the up above, with all our rage and all our love, adding fuel to the fire down in the streets tonight. Down in the streets tonight. Down in the streets tonight.
This is essentially written as a song for you to join in with. And of course, in these circumstances, I'm not going to get much feedback. But I'm going to imagine that you could join in with us somewhere if you get to listen to this video. Farewell to my family. It's now I must leave you, that far fatal shore. In chains we shall see, although we are taken, do not be mistaken. As brothers in union, we shall be free. They can bring down our wages, starve all our children. In chains they can bind us, steal all our land. They can mock our religion, from our family divide us, but they can't break the oath of a Tolpuddle man. To those who rule us, we are the dissenters. Do your duty, be thankful, don't complain, we are taught. For God in his wisdom divided his kingdom, for few to have much, while so many have naught. They can bring down our wages, starve all our children. In chains they can bind us, steal all our land. They can mock our religion, from our family divide us, but they can't break the oath of a Tolpuddle man. As brothers together, with an oath we will bind us. The labouring poor in all England shall rise. Though Frampton has framed us, they never will tame us. Arise, all you Britons, we'll yet win the prize. They can bring down our wages, chains they can bind us, steal all our land, they can mock our religion, from our family divide us, but they can't break the oath of a Tolpuddle man. Help me out now. They can bring down our wages, yeah, starve all our children, in chains they can bind us, steal all our land, they can mock our religion, from our family divide us, but they can't break the oath of a Tolpuddle man. No, they can't break the oath of a Tolpuddle man. Thank you for joining in. I heard you. And the birds.
We have birds.
I've only been to Tolpuddle, probably did tell this story last year, I've only ever been to the actual in-person Tolpuddle festival once before, and it was brilliant. It's not like any other festival. I think my favourite bit was the march, seeing everyone's banners and everyone smiling and walking together, and that was just wonderful. I think that's like the spirit of Tolpuddle for me. And yeah, this song is kind of follows on from that. It's a track called Flags and Banners, and I kind of wrote it in response to basically the government saying that they don't want us to protest, they don't want us to march, they don't want us to be loud, they don't want us to be heard, and yeah. So I wrote a protest song about it. My favourite form of protest, singing at people or shouting at people. Anyway, this is Flags and Banners. A friend of mine once asked, what's the point of us writing these words if we're not gonna try and change the world? It could be down to us when all is said and done, when every other avenue's been plugged and they won't let our flags unfurl. And on that day, we can't just stand by and let them get their way. Come what may, our future is defined by the actions that we take. So grab your flags and grab your banners, raise them high. Make your hand into a fist and point it to the sky. Because all of us together is the only way that we'll affect the change. There is power in the union, and together we won't let them get their way. No, not today. We said it's your turn now, go out and make a row. And when you sing, make sure it's from the heart, so people know they're not alone. It could be down to us when all is said and done, cause everybody needs a song to sing to match the feeling in their bones. And on that day, we can't just stand by and let the powers get their way. Come what may, our future is defined by the actions that we take. So grab your flags and grab your banners, raise them high. Make your hand into a fist and point it to the sky. Because all of us together is the only way that we'll affect the change. There is power in a union, and together we won't let them get their way. No, not today. Whoa. Keep it going. Well, I've got people say I'm wrong, but in politics today. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the festival, and I will hopefully see you next time. Bye bye.
Pie cantar que vamos a triunfar, avanzan ya banderas de unidad y tú vendrás marchando junto a mí y así verás tu canto y tu bandera florecer, la luz de un rojo amanecer anuncia ya la vida que vendrá.
Hope you enjoyed that really rousing song. I think that's one of my favourites, and I think we had them last year as well. But remember to join us 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'm going to be up bright and early, and I hope you're there with me. So here we are with our last bit of music for the evening, and enjoy yourselves, take care, and see you then.
Together we don't stand. There is power in our union, and the lessons of the past were all learned with workers' blood. The mistakes of the bosses we must pay for. From the cities and the farmlands to trenches full of mud, war has always been the boss's way, sir. The union forever defending our rights. Down with the black leg, the workers unite. With our brothers and our sisters, together we will stand. There is power in a union. Now I long for the morning that they realise brutality and unjust laws cannot defeat us. Who'll defend the workers who cannot organise, and the bosses send their lackeys out to cheat us. Money speaks for money, the devil for his own. Who comes to speak for the skin and the bone? For the comfort to the widow, the light to the child. There is power in a union. Forever defending our rights. Down with the black leg, the workers unite. With our brothers and our sisters, together we will stand. There is power in a union. There is power in a union. Thank you.